Okay, Matthew chapter 5, breakdown part 2. But I want to go back over something because this is really important. Jesus also dismissed the use of casual oaths. This does not mean wedding vows, courtroom oaths, or contracts. Jesus is speaking of sealing promises with the same kind of "I swear by" statement. While the Old Testament allowed for oath in the name of God, Leviticus 19 and 12, people of Jesus' era would swear on lesser things, often to excuse later violations. People even today will add "I cross my heart" or "I swear" to suggest a promise is sincere. Since this implies the person's word is not always trustworthy, Jesus says such oaths are evil. Matthew 5:33 through 35. Christ also refers to the Old Testament's law of retaliation, Deuteronomy 19 and 21. This was meant to prevent conflicts from spiraling out of control by keeping punishments equal to the offense. In personal matters, through Jesus commands believers to seek peace over getting even, while insults and abuse should be ignored or returned with more love and service than the aggressor expects. This even extends to demonstrating love and praying for those who hate and persecute us. Matthew 5:38 and 47. Jesus' final demand of those who would be righteous before God is the most difficult of all. You must be perfect as God is perfect. This not only explains the depth of God's commandments, it sets the stage for Jesus' preaching of the gospel as salvation by grace through faith. Okay. Matthew 5:48. So the chapter context. Matthew 5 follows Matthew's description of the enormous crowds that were following Jesus. Matthew 4:25. One day Jesus sits down on the hill. Y'all, wow, that just, whew. Okay, to teach them in an address we now call the Sermon on the Mount. He describes as blessed are blessed. Look, he describes as blessed those who are poor in spirit, who mourn, and who are persecuted. Christ also explains how God's standards of righteousness goes far beyond behaviors and speech. They also include our thoughts and attitudes. Meeting God's standards means perfection. Chapter 6 continues this sermon with more examples of Jesus clarifying God's intent for godly living. Let me bring this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so the breakdown part 2. Matthew 5 contains a sermon on the Mount, presents a radical vision for life within the kingdom of God, focusing on eternal transformation and righteousness that reflects God's love and mercy. It emphasizes the need for a change of heart, encouraging believers to embody God's character in their daily lives. You got to go to the bathroom? Okay. Y'all kids are so funny. They are so funny. Okay, so the Beatitudes. The 8 blessings, Matthew 5:3 through 12, describes the characters of those who are part of God's kingdom, highlighting qualities like humility, mourning, meekness, and desire for righteousness. While they describe a state of blessing, they also imply a moral imperative to cultivate these characteristics in our lives. Salt of the earth and light of the world. Jesus calls his followers to be influential presences in the world, acting as salt to preserve and add flavor, and as light to illuminate God's love and righteousness. I almost lost my spot for a second. Fulfilling the law. Jesus clarifies that he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, emphasizing the importance of eternal righteousness and not just outward adherence to the law. He challenges his listeners to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, Matthew 5 and 20, which goes beyond mere external observance to include the heart and motives behind actions. Heart posture. Something just clicked. Okay. Challenging old laws and traditions. Jesus reinterprets and elevates the law, addressing issues like murder, adultery, divorce, oaths in retaliation. He calls for deeper, more profound application of God's principle, including loving enemies and praying for persecutors. Perfection and love. Jesus urges his followers to strive for perfection, reflecting the perfection of God, Matthew 5:48. Emphasizing the love as foundation for all relationships and actions, including love for enemies. Y'all, I got bit up by some mosquitoes. My gosh, they just had a field day with me. In essence, Matthew 5 provides a blueprint for Christian living, encouraging believers to cultivate a transformed heart, live out God's love and righteousness, and be a positive influence in the world. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, y'all, so that is all I have for Matthew chapter 5. I'm so sorry it was a 2-part video. I really did not expect that first part to be so long. Well, honestly, I didn't expect this whole video to be this long, but when you break it down the word, baby, take as long as it takes. All right, y'all, so that is it, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.